one of Donald Trump's best lackeys, a guy by the name of Emil Bove or Bove. You may recognize him. He's channeling a little bit of Stephen Miller and a little bit of Dracula, right? Kind of in between. So Emil Bove was first made infamous maybe, when he was one of Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyers, not only for his Manhattan DA prosecution, but down in Florida for the Classified Documents Espionage Act federal prosecution, as well as Donald Trump's other cases. Emil Bove and Todd Blanche, another name that you may be familiar with, who's like the deputy attorney general next to Pam Bondi. Again, all of these lackeys and cronies and sycophants. Emil Bove was successful in getting Donald Trump 34 felony convictions. So Donald Trump, convicted felon Donald Trump, he got that moniker courtesy of Emil Bove and Todd Blanche. So bravo. So we Americans that believe in democracy, we owe a debt of gratitude to Emil Bove for doing such a bang-up job that Donald Trump got convicted for 34 felonies. But I digress a little bit. The reason why I want to talk about Emil Bove today is he has been nominated by his cult leader for the title of Federal Appeals Court Judge for the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. Because what else do we do in Donald Trump land? We reward our sycophants and our devotees with cush jobs. And it's a cush job, folks. Let me tell you, as a lawyer, I'd take a gig as a federal district court judge or a federal appellate court judge. Heck, Supreme Court. Lifetime appointments, people. Lifetime appointments, people. Lifetime. So Emil Bove is the nominee for the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, and he is going to be subjected to, hopefully, extensive grilling and questioning during his Senate confirmation hearing Wednesday, June 25th. And he should be subjected to extensive grilling and questioning because there is a bombshell New York Times article that just came out by an incredible reporter by the name of Devlin Barrett. If you don't follow him, you should. His reporting has always been top notch and always really good. And a whistleblower. We need whistleblowers, people. A whistleblower has stepped forward. He's a former assistant United States attorney who worked for the Department of Justice. His name is Erez Reuveni, E-R-E-Z, last name spelled R-E-U-V as in Victor, E, N as in Nancy, I. And I apologize, Erez, if I am pronouncing your last name incorrectly. But Erez Reuveni was a 15-year career lawyer at the Department of Justice until April of this year, when he had the integrity to tell the truth in federal court to a judge, and when he had the integrity to stand up to his superiors at the Department of Justice when they wanted him to lie, when they wanted him to obfuscate, and when they wanted him to play hide the ball with the federal court, and when they wanted him to kowtow and go along and bend the knee to Emil Bove, Todd Blanche, Pam Bondi, and others at Department of Justice. So, all kidding aside, we do owe a debt of gratitude to Erez Reuveni for being an honest lawyer, an honest broker when it comes to the rule of law. Now, let me tell you what this bombshell media reporting is from Devlin Barrett. This whistleblower has come forward to say that on at least three occasions, senior Justice Department officials engaged in wrongdoing by, quote, ignoring court orders, presenting legal arguments with no basis in the law, misrepresenting facts to the courts, and in one instance, directing him to misstate facts in violation of his legal and ethical duties as an officer of the court. And who is one of those senior Justice Department officials? I'll let you take a guess. Emil Bove. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. So what's the first instance of wrongdoing? If you guys remember, federal judge James Boasberg, he is the chief judge in the D.C. circuit up in Washington, D.C., chief judge of that federal district court system up there. Remember, he was the judge who was, and continues, not past tense, to deal with the Alien Enemies Act cases, some of those AEA cases, but he was on the forefront. He was the one who dealt with those cases directly out of the gate. And if you'll recall, he's the judge who had the cases where the planes were taken off. And even though he ordered the planes to turn around and come back, they weren't. And the DOJ is like, sorry, judge, they were in international airspace. And sorry, judge, you made an oral pronouncement from the bench. And we didn't think that was an order because it wasn't in writing. I mean, really disingenuous, dishonest statements to be made by a lawyer, especially. But at a hearing on March 15th, the judge asked Drew Ensign, who is in the Department of Justice and who is a superior or a boss of Erez Raveni. He asked Mr. Ensign, the judge said, are there any deportations or removals that are imminent in the next 24 to 48 hours? And Ensign responded, quote, I don't know the answer to that question, which was a lie. Because according to Erez Raveni, Ensign had been present in the previous day's meeting when Emil Bove stated clearly that one or more planes containing individuals subject to the AEA would be taking off over the weekend no matter what. This is a first-hand eyewitness account, folks. This is not hearsay. Erez Raveni is a person who actually was in the room. You know, we talk about being in the room when it happens. Erez was in the room when these statements were made by Emil Bove. This is a first-hand eyewitness personal account of what Bove said and did. And now, obviously, what Drew Ensign said and did, which was false. So, because Drew Ensign was in court in front of Judge Boasberg, Raveni was listening by phone, and when he was hearing these misrepresentations made to the court, he started texting his supervisor, he started emailing DHS, the State Department officials, saying, no one subject to the AEA in our custody can be removed. Why? Because Judge Boasberg had ordered that nobody could be removed. And Erez kept on saying in his email, anyone in the air should be returned unless they have a different legal authorization for deportation. Lawyers at DHS and State Department did not respond to Erez's email. Then he followed up with another message saying, we have to address this ASAP to avoid contempt. No response. So then Erez came to the conclusion that DHS and Homeland Security and, DHS and the State Department were receiving contrary directions from someone else to take actions in violation of court orders. So then what happens is that the acting assistant attorney general emails Erez and says that Emil Bove had advised DHS that under the court order, it was permissible to deplane individuals on the flight set to part of U.S. airspace before Judge Boasberg's written order appeared on the docket. Then on March 17th, Judge Boasberg asked the government to say, when did the planes leave? Do you guys remember that whole exchange? When did the planes depart? Raveni was told by his superiors, Erez was told by his superiors, leadership at DOJ reporting down the chain, the government is not going to answer the court's questions about anything that happened before 7:26 p.m. on March 15th, so do not provide information about when the flights took off. The Trump administration stonewalls Judge Boasberg. Erez says he found it increasingly difficult to get answers, directly or otherwise, from his bosses or the agencies that he was representing in court. Let's stop for a second. When you are a lawyer in the DOJ, you represent the United States government. That is your client. But the United States government has different federal agencies underneath it, right? Department of State, Department of Homeland Security, etc. So when you, on behalf of the Department of Justice, on behalf of these agencies are representing these clients in court, you need to have a direct vein of communication with your clients so you know how to answer questions and to make arguments in good faith when you are in court. And Erez needs this information because he knows that the judge is going to grill him on behalf of the administration as a lawyer on behalf of the administration to provide answers. So when he's getting stonewalled himself by these state agencies, by these federal agencies, it's a problem for him, right? So the evidence, according to Erez, is that senior DOJ leadership withheld information from its own lawyers and provided contrary instructions to other agencies. The third instance of wrongdoing, according to this whistleblower, is the following. Kilmar Abrego Garcia's case. According to Erez, when he, as in Erez, went to court, and you'll remember this because we applauded the integrity of him when he went to court, the judge in that case asked him about the fact that there was an error, a mistake made by the Trump administration when they put Kilmar Abrego Garcia into custody and shipped him off into El Salvador, despite an order from a prior immigration judge ruling that Kilmar Abrego Garcia should not have been sent to El Salvador. Erez made this representation to the judge that it had been a mistake, that the Trump administration had removed Kilmar Abrego Garcia as a mistake. After that hearing, Drew Ensign calls Erez Raveni and says, when the questions, and Ensign said that these questions were prompted by the White House. Ensign said, why did you not argue that Abrego Garcia was a terrorist? Arez replied, there was no evidence to support the claim that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is a terrorist, nor did any of the department's prior court briefs make that assertion. Stop. Isn't that just so important? There's no evidence that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is a terrorist. There's no evidence that affirmatively there have been representations made in court filings or in court briefs on behalf of the federal government that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is a terrorist. These are uncontroverted facts, people. When you make a representation to a court, state, local, federal, you are making representations that you are making these statements, that they are true, that these are accurate statements. Then Arez says, besides, just because you call someone a terrorist doesn't mean that they are not entitled to due process. Thank the Lord for people like Arez Ravini. The next day, Ravini was told you have to sign an appeal brief making the terrorism claim against Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Ravini said, nope, not going to do it because I can't make new factual claims which are contrary to the law and frivolous and untrue. Then his supervisor tells him, you should sign this brief. You signed up for the responsibility to do so. To which Arez Ravini responded, quote, I didn't sign up to lie. He was placed on administrative leave hours later and then fired the next week. Unbelievable. Predictably, what are we hearing from Todd Blanche and the Trump administration? Oh, this whistleblower, Arez Ravini, he's just a disgruntled prior employee. Blanche is saying this article from the Times is a false hit piece a day before his confirmation hearing for Emil Bove. However, Devlin Barrett at the New York Times has actually seen this whistleblower filing that has been provided to the committee and to all senators on this committee. And apparently there are, quote, a copious trail of emails, texts, and phone records that support Arez's version of events. And, of course, to combat the disgruntled employee lie that is being promoted by the Trump administration right now to try to discredit Arez Ravini, whistleblower, Arez says he was recently promoted in the Department of Justice, and he actually defended controversial immigration policies during the first Trump administration. Amazing, right? Somebody who defended the first Trump administration in the immigration proceedings, somebody who was promoted because he did such a great job. Suddenly he's a crappy lawyer. Suddenly he's a disgruntled former employee. Why? Because he stood up for his right to be able to do the right thing. He has filed a 27-page account with his lawyers at the Government Accountability Project with new details and allegations about Emil Bove's role. But let's get to the juicy part. On March 14th, Emil Bove, during a meeting, because he was the Deputy Attorney General, right? Or the Assistant Deputy Attorney General, Emil Bove told his insubordinates that Donald Trump would soon invoke the Alien Enemies Act to rapidly fly a group of immigrants out of the country that very weekend. Two other officials were present, James McHenry and Paul Perkins, as well as Arez's Ravini supervisors, Drew Ensign and August Flente. Bove stressed to all in attendance that the planes needed to take off no matter what. Bove then broached the possibility that a court order would enjoin those removals before they could be effectuated. Listen to this part, people, now. Listen to this part. Bove stated that DOJ would need to consider telling the courts, quote, fuck you, end quote, and to ignore any such court order. Ravini perceived that others in the room looked stunned. He observed awkward, nervous glances among people in the room. Silence overtook the room. Arez Ravini and others were quickly ushered out of the room. I mean, how can somebody like that, Emil Bove, become a federal appeals court judge when he shows that he doesn't care about the rule of law? He only cares about what his boss wants him to do, he isn't abandoned, by the way, because in private practice, he was representing Donald Trump, and now he's a government lawyer, and he should be representing the people of the United States of America. His client is the United States of America. His client is not Donald Trump anymore, and yet he thinks he's the president's personal lawyer. Recall, there are at least 3 other occasions where Emil Bove has done conduct which is an abomination. Two January 31st memos where Emil Bove ordered the firing of assistant United States attorneys that worked on the January 6 prosecutions. He ordered 7 FBI officials to be fired. He also said that he wanted a list of all FBI personnel who worked on January 6 cases. He said that January 6, that The work that was done by those prosecutors prosecuting the January 6th insurrectionists was a, quote, grave national injustice perpetrated on the American people over the last 4 years. And yet, isn't it funny that when he worked for the Department of Justice, because Bove was a federal prosecutor himself, he actually worked on January 6 cases? Does that mean that Emil Bove did a grave injustice to the American people? Also, that FBI memo where he said, let's fire those FBI employees. He said that those FBI employees did a grave national injustice when they were investigating the January 6th insurrectionists. And then on February 10th, he sent a letter to the SDNY to drop the corruption charges against New York Mayor Eric Adams. As we know, at least 6 DOJ officials, including the interim U.S. Attorney Danielle Sassoon, resigned. And then later on, 3 other federal prosecutors resigned in protest due to the instructions by Emil Bove to drop this corruption case. Was it a quid pro quo with Eric Adams so that Eric Adams would help Donald Trump with his immigration enforcement campaign? Clearly wasn't rule of law, people. We need rule of law prosecutors. We need rule of law DOJ officials. We need rule of law judges. We need rule of law federal appellate court judges. We're not going to get that with Emil Bove. Call your senators, write your senators, communicate loudly, spread this video with everyone you know. We want people to know the kind of person that Emil Bove is, and thank gosh for whistleblowers like Erez Ravini for coming forward at great risk to him, personally and professionally. The guy was a career DOJ lawyer. 15 years he had been there. He showed that he was willing to continue to represent the federal government in its cases. And he couldn't stay. Not only was he put on administrative leave, but he was fired. Why? Because he did the right thing. He was punished for doing the right thing, people. You can't lie to the court. You can't make affirmative misrepresentations to the court. As an officer of the court, you have an obligation, a duty, a professional responsibility, and an ethical responsibility to tell the truth. You do not do the bidding of Donald Trump simply because that's what he wants. And you certainly do not do the bidding of what your supervisor tells you to do because the White House is ordering your supervisor to tell you what to do. We don't lie to the court. We don't lie to judges. We don't lie to the American people. You do not want somebody like Emil Bove as a Third Circuit Court of Appeal federal appeals court judge. You don't even want him to be, I don't know, a parking garage or a strip mall lawyer, do you? You don't want that. That's an Aliyah Habba job. Alrighty, folks. Be mad, be outraged, demand accountability. I'll see you on the other side. Katie Phang here. The truth matters now more than ever. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. Thanks for watching.